Good morning, my friends out there in devotion land. Hope you're doing well. This is Bo Willette, and I am your crazy host for these devotions. It's May 26th, and June is right there. Boy, that is amazing. It's hard to believe that we're already in May. I know I say that every time. It's like, but it seems like time just flies, don't it? It just keeps going and just so quick. You know, when you're little, you think it kind of goes by slow. And then as you get older, right, things just seem to whip by quick. But, you know, while we're here, let's enjoy the time and let's get focused in the right spot. You know, I wonder what a lot of people are doing this morning. You know, I wonder what they're in, how they get up, what they focus on, kind of where their mindset is at. And I know for me, it's good to get up and kind of focus it on, you know, the sun, you know, because we're all orbiting around the sun. But I don't mean the sun up in the sky, you know, like what we would call up in the sky, right? I'm talking about the Son of God, you know, and that when we are having our lives revolved around the sun, then guess what? We kind of stay in the correct orbit, right? The natural orbit. But man, when we get our eyes off the sun, boy, we get squirrely quick. That's for sure. So, on this devotion, we're going to be in a new book of the Bible. So you got to be pretty fired up about that. We've done a ton of books of the Bible, all in order. Wow. And they are at my YouTube channel, Bo Willette. And so you can just type in Bo, B-E-A-U, O-U-E-L-L-E-T-T-E. That's right. French-Canadian name, very, very vowel-y, for sure. But you type that in YouTube and you can get to them and check them all out. Go through the books of the Bible in a really quick way. Pretty chill way too. I'm a Generation X guy, so I tend to have a lot of, you know, kind of thoughts from, of course, my generation and how we looked at things, but it's certainly relevant today too. I see how I grew up in Southern California as a secular progressive kid. I see that today, that kind of philosophy that I grew up around in my home too with my dad really has catapulted into mainstream in many ways. And so the things I hear usually what we call on the left, those are things that I'm very familiar with and I grew up hearing all the time. So it's not abnormal to my ears. So I kind of tend to have an interesting kind of viewpoint, like we all do. We all have different viewpoints. Boy, has life changed since my planet, so to speak, is revolving around the sun. I am orbiting around the sun now. And so my life certainly has changed a bit, I must say. And anyway, it's good having Paula in the house this morning, that's for sure. She's one of our favorite Comment Corner Facebook friends, that's for sure, and she's a wonderful sister in Christ, and always praying for her. So let's get into it. Esther, the book of Esther. Now this is written around that time of you know Ezra and Nehemiah historically, and so it's kind of neat that we get this book that's kind of a real interesting detail of what was going on in the Medo-Persian Empire when we really just got done 2 books talking about what was going on in Jerusalem. Remember, the temple was being built, Nehemiah, the wall was being built, people were starting to come back, and they were starting to live under the covenant of Moses. But you know, sometimes happy times aren't always here again. And sometimes there's things going on back in the home front. You know, in this time, it was the Medo-Persian Empire. They took over the Babylonian Empire, and they still had all these Hebrews that were in captivity in Babylon, now in the Medo-Persian Empire. And here's where we get the narrative of Esther. And boy, it's a really cool one. Check this out. It's very relevant to our day, too. I think you're going to see that. To me, it kind of pops right off the page. It says, these events happened in the days of Xerxes, who reigned over 127 provinces, stretching from India to Ethiopia. Wow, this dude had a reign for sure. And you might know Xerxes, man. Remember that? You know, I remember that movie that came out. It was like called 300 or something. It was about the Medo-Persian Empire going against the small band of warriors from Greece. And the small band of warriors from Greece won, and it was an amazing battle that took place. And anyway, this is kind of the time that we're talking about right here. So this is kind of warrior session. You know, Xerxes was a warrior dude, and kind of like the equivalent of King David to the Hebrews. You know, he was a king, but he was a warrior. Here you have Xerxes, who's that kind of guy too. And you know, warriors can get a little interesting. Now, me growing up, I knew a lot about warriors because I had a ton of warrior friends, right? You know, when you're in elementary school, you have your little crew, and you got to have good fighters with you. Then you get to junior high, and you better have good fighters with you. And then when you get in high school, you better have really good fighters with you. Dudes that are your friends that knew how to fight. And boy, some of my friends, man, they were fighters. They could really fight. And I'd stay away from that because I'd get beat up pretty quick. I'm not that big of a dude. But man, some of these guys could really lay some wood on folk and on each other. That's for sure. But that's kind of the warrior mentality, man. Super aggressive, right? Oh boy, that's a world I never really wanted to know too much about, but I was around it, I must say, and I've seen some brawls in my day. Me, myself, not so much. Playing guitar, spinning records, you know, I was the music guy, the music man of the crew. But maybe you grew up and you remember those guys, you know, and yeah, so Xerxes, not probably the nicest dude on the block, for sure. He's not the dude who's just hanging out in the library reading. And it says, at that time Xerxes ruled his empire from his royal throne at the fortress of Susa. In the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all of his nobles and officials. He invited all the military officers of Persia and Media, as well as the princes and nobles of the provinces. The celebration lasted 180 days. Oh my heavens. I mean, you got to have some serious peace in your kingdom to be partying for 180 days. I mean, does that sound gnarly or what? I mean, that sounds crazy. I mean, you know, this is a party of parties. You think we party nowadays? You think people today know how to party? Nothing. See, this is the cool thing about the Bible again. Bo growing up a party kid, always in backyard parties, always at clubs, always at that kind of thing. You know, here you read the Bible, and these dudes, I mean, they lit it up. I mean, these guys really knew how to party big time. And so Xerxes has a 180-day party, a tremendous display of the opulent wealth of his entire empire and the pomp and splendor of his majesty. This was a Vegas party like no other, right? This is the non-stop, it's going thing. And when it was all over, the king gave a banquet for all the people. Man, like they needed more banqueting. Gosh, sounds like it was all you can eat anyway. And it says, from the greatest to the least who were in the fortress of Susa. It lasted for 7 days and was held in the courtyard of the palace garden. The courtyard was beautifully decorated with white cotton curtains and blue hangings, which was faceted with white linen cords and purple ribbons to silver rings embedded in marble pillars. Gold and silver couches stood on a mosaic pavement of porphyry, marble, mother of pearl, and other costly stones. Now, I'm not an interior decorator, so I'm not too good at breaking all this down. But I must say, sometimes, you know, the rich just want to show their riches. You know, it makes me think about it this way. Like, do I ever get mad when people that have money, they just kind of flaunt it? they, the way they act and, everything they whine and complain or, but they got everything, man. Everything's just handed to them. Yeah, that can be a bummer. And when you hear that, you kind of go, man, look at what you got. Look at all that you have, man. I mean, can't you see it? But they can't, right? They're blinded by their wealth. They're blinded by their pride. But then I look inward and I go, Bo, what do you do? What do you do to do the same thing? Where is your pride blinding you? And is there areas where you're not understanding that you're rich, that you're wealthy, and maybe not according to Nancy Pelosi wealthy, but hey, I mean, I am in probably a small percentile of the world. I got a nice house, popcorn ceilings are cool. I got a beautiful backyard. I think I got cars. I got 2 cars. I mean, I got a motorcycle. I mean, that's pretty cool. But if you sit there and you go out in your day, and I'm flaunting, do I flaunt that? Maybe the same pride that's in Xerxes and is the same pride that's in me, and maybe the same insecurity that is in Xerxes. Maybe he's got some insecurity issues, man. 180-day party, have to throw a banquet, got everybody who's anybody there at the party. Maybe there's a lot of insecurity going on in this dude's life where he just needs all this pomp and he needs all this stuff. And maybe there's insecurity in me that needs to make people think that I'm something. That's really sad. One of the things the gospel does of Jesus Christ is that it humbles us to make us realize that we are nothing, that nothing good in our flesh dwells. The Bible tells us nothing good in our flesh dwells. Apart from Jesus, and this is what he said in the book of John, apart from me, he says, you can do nothing. Man, apart from him, I can do nothing. Nothing of eternal significance. Nothing. I might make some significance in this world, in the physical here, right here in the present, on the planet, but as far as eternal significance, none. It still won't make me holy. It still won't get me to dwell with a holy God. No, without Jesus, I can do nothing. Man, I need Jesus through and through. The New Testament says have no confidence in our flesh, meaning we shouldn't put confidence in our ability, but we really should have our primary confidence in God's ability, his ability to do a work. So the gospel really humbles us quite a bit, don't it? And so whether the pride, the insecurity, both that is moving in Xerxes' life, that same thing very much affects me and affects you too. And it says, drinks were served in gold goblets. Many designs were on them. There was an abundance of royal wine reflecting the king's generosity by edict of the king. That's interesting. It reflected the king's generosity. Reminds me of when Jesus changed the water to wine in Canaan, and they were blown away. It was the king's generosity, right, that changed that water to wine. That's kind of a cool idea, right? Jesus being the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Man, he changed the water to wine, and he made great wine. But it reflected what? Jesus' generosity. By edict of the king, no limits were placed on the drinking, for the king had instructed at his palace officials to serve each man as much as he wanted. Hey, you can drink as much wine as you want. At the same time, Queen Vashti gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace of King Xerxes. So you had the men going bananas, you had the women breaking off and doing their thing as well. Wine galore, right? Everybody drinking, having a great time, smoking a little doobie, doing whatever they're doing, right? Having their thing. And here we go. On the 7th day of the feast, when King Xerxes was in high spirits, so 7 days, they're a week in, really doing a great job of doing their thing, getting into the swing of it, I guess. Because of the wine, he told the 7 eunuchs who attended him. So he was drunk. He was pretty ripped on some wine at this point. He tells the 7 eunuchs who attended him, and he gives the name of these eunuchs, to bring Queen Vashti to him with the royal crown on her head. He wanted his nobles and all the other men to gaze upon her beauty, for she was a very beautiful woman. But when they conveyed the king's order to the Queen Vashti, she refused to come. This made the king furious, and he burned with anger. Man. Okay. So here we can just look at how our world is. We've all heard of objectification of women, right? To objectify a woman. Well, I got to tell you, we don't just objectify women. We objectify everything on the planet. It's funny. You talk to a feminist, they're going to talk about, objectification of women. They're going to talk about how bad that is. But there's an objectification of men. There's an objectification of children. There's an objectification of everything. We objectify all things. We make it just some object. We remove its feelings, and we see it as a number. It reminds me of an Iron Maiden song back in the day. I am not a number. I am a free man. But I divulge back into my old culture, right? But the idea is that we aren't a number. We are individuals, and we're to be looked at as individual people. But yet we objectify all things. Companies objectify people all the time, right? They're just a number on a particular test group or test subjects or these kind of things. All the time objectification is happening. That's not a feminist argument. That's an argument of sinful inclinations of our world. And that's what I've always noticed, that sometimes when I grew up a progressive, we'd always just bag on kind of one thing, like, oh yeah, that's objectification of women. Yeah, bringing out Queen Vashti, that's objectification of women. Yeah, it is, but there's all kinds of objectification going on. We'd ignore everything else because we didn't want to get to our hearts on where maybe we're messing up. Does that make sense? So we tend to bag on the obvious and, get everything off of us. This doesn't just happen, by the way, in secular progressivism. This happens in the church as well. Instead of us looking at our own issues, we tend to bag on those ones we can demonize. Hey, those pornography people out there, let's get at them, but never mind our prideful, greedy, envious, prejudice that's in us. We can really go these routes. And so we have to realize that objectification is something that we deal with as human beings. And here, as happens so much, you drink a little bit, you go to the backyard of the party and you start pumping the keg, right? And you start drinking a little bit, and what happens? You start wanting to objectify. You start losing the sight of people's humanity, and you start acting like an animal. You just start wanting to objectify and use people for a animalistic purpose, an instinct, an itch, to satisfy an itch that you have. And here, after he's drinking, Queen Vashti he asks for Queen Vashti to come out. And man, it is unreal, right? She says, no way, Jose, I'm not going out there. Obviously, Xerxes wanted to show her off, to all these men. He wanted to bring her out, have her dress up, maybe have her look, nice, kind of thing, and really have her do the queen dance, I guess, or just hang out and just show her body, her face, things like that she wasn't supposed to do. It wasn't a decent act for a queen to be that way. But yet his, what is it? His insecurities, maybe. as a dude. Maybe he thinks, oh, or maybe his pride, I'm going to show her off, kind of thing, as like a trophy wife. Man, what a bummer, huh? This is why people use that term misogynistic, because this is pretty misogynistic, right? Right? It's really an abuse to your wife, to use her for this purpose. You didn't go to her and say, hey, Queen Vashti, you're my queen. And man, you're just so beautiful, man. I want to like display you to the world. I mean, that's how beautiful you are. I mean, that's one thing, right? That's one thing to go to her and ask her and let her know that she's beautiful and that you are wanting to display her, to other men. That's one thing. And give her an option to say, you know what, I don't want to do that. And you go, right on, I get that, And she might say to you, hey, but why do you want me to do that? And then it kind of puts you in a situation where you got to figure out why. And maybe we got to deal with our insecurities and things that are going on in our hearts, And obviously Xerxes wasn't into that, People of power, like Xerxes, people of power don't want to show weakness. This is common. People of power do not want to show an inner weakness. And this is the problem, is that when people write books or talk about subjects, whatever they are, they always talk about the subject, but they never go, hey, but I'm the problem too. And see, that's the tough part, right? You read a book about the problem with this or the problem with that, and yeah, they're spilling out all the problems with it, but they're not never getting to the point of like, well, what about you, right? What is your life? How do you work on that yourself? How are you different? How did that happen? Those kind of things. We learn about our own issues, and because you know what? Someone might really write a good book about, man, how to get out of gambling. And they write an amazing book about, hey, how not to gamble and how to get out of gambling addiction and blah, blah, blah. And it's a great book. But you look at them and you go, wow, they got a problem. What's their problem? Man, they overeat, right? And you go, wow, what a trip, And it's funny, they had all that good stuff when it came to gambling, but you notice it doesn't necessarily move into every area of our life. Isn't that interesting? Wow. We have problems as human beings, and we all do. None of us got it all together. We might write a book about economics, but we might look at the way we do our finances, and it's not that great. It's amazing. Or we might look at another area, and it's not that great. Unreal, right? It's unreal. But a lot of us just don't want to show the vulnerability in a book because we tend to think, as human beings, this is interesting. We tend to think that the Xerxes are the people to listen to. They're the people of power. They're the people that look strong and seem strong. And boy, they're to follow. Interesting. Jesus, a man with no sin at all. But how did he look to the public? Super weak. Unreal. Unreal. Without sin, without moral flaw, absolutely loving and compassionate. The one who resists the proud but gives grace to the humble. Who is just absolutely stunning in his behavior. Is seen as a weakling and is crucified by people without any fight in him. He did not kick, he did not scream, he did not lash out, but when he was insulted and reviled, he did not revile in return, but he committed himself to him who judges righteously. 1 Peter chapter 2. Wow, what a difference, right? Unreal. Humans, even when we write a book about doing something right, we probably have it wrong somewhere else. We do. We are literally a wreck in every neck of the woods. It's unbelievable. And it blows my mind that when the Bible says there's no one good, no, not one, each have gone their own way, it's not messing around. It's really saying that. That's true. Each have gone their own way. So I might read a book about someone who's like an expert on something. But I do realize, even though they might not admit it in the book at all, that they too kind of, have their own vulnerabilities as well. They just don't admit it, right? And Xerxes certainly didn't want to admit any vulnerability. He immediately consulted with his wine advisors who knew all the Persian laws and customs, and for he was always asked their advice, the names of these men, and he lists their names. These are the people who were over charge of the laws. And he says, they met with the king regularly and held the highest positions in the empire. What must be done to Queen Vashti, the king demanded, with what penalty does the law provide for a queen who refuses to obey the king's orders, properly sent through his eunuchs? He's a man who's, what does he want? He wants what he wants, and he wants the woman to do it. That's the misogynistic kind of idea there, right? Is you jump when I tell you to jump, kind of thing. Man, pretty tweaked, right? Really messed up. Do people still have this attitude today? Yeah, but it's not just on one side, and I want you to understand that. And we have to look at our contribution as well. Do I objectify myself? I do. Man, I need to work on that. So I bring that before the Lord. Memucan answered the king, that's one of these people. It says, king and his nobles, Queen Vashti has wronged not only the king, but also every noble and citizen throughout your empire. Women everywhere will begin to despise their husbands when they learn that Queen Vashti has refused to appear before the king. Before this day is out, the wives of all the king's nobles throughout Persia and Media will hear what the queen did and will start treating their husbands the same way. There will be no end to their contempt and anger. This has been a theme argument by men throughout the generations, right? If you give them a little bit of freedom, they're going to get a little crazy, right? They're going to get a little squirrely. Pretty soon they're going to want to do this, or they're going to want to do that, or they're going to want to do that. And then it's going to get and they're going to despise us. They're going to think we're dumb. They're going to think we're idiots. Well, I hate to tell you, but maybe we are. And maybe the reason why women's issues are so messed up today is because maybe men haven't done a good job of leading at all. Maybe we've kind of really led pretty poorly. So if it please the king, we suggest that you issue a written decree, a law of the Persians and Medes that cannot be revoked. It should order the Queen Vashti to be forever banished from the presence of King Xerxes, and that the king should choose another queen more worthy than she. When this decree is published throughout the king's vast empire, husbands everywhere, whatever their rank, will receive proper respect from their wives. That's what they need, that proper respect. We want you to come and dance, in the living room in front of the party. You come and dance. You do that little jig, Hey, we want you to be a go-go dancer. Let's do go-go dancing. That kind of thing. Unreal, right? Super sad. Happens all the time today. Power structures put more power trips on people, right? This is happening even in our day in different ways, but it still happens in our day. And we see this all the time. So, this is, when a power group, a power structure, what do they do when they don't want to get vulnerable? When you don't want to get vulnerable, like me, if I don't want to get vulnerable, I'll try to put more power trips on people. I'll try to control them through force, through words, things like that. Yeah, because the alternative is to say, hey, I'm sorry, and say I biffed it. I didn't do the right thing. And that means that's a sign of weakness. And that vulnerability, a lot of us don't know how to live in that kind of vulnerability. And because we're not used to it. What we're used to is we feel good when we think we're right. That's when we feel good. We feel in control. And when we say things aren't good, it's because they're, quote, out of our control. We start feeling vulnerable. Do you see how we're kind of working in the opposite way of what we should be doing as humans? Where we should learn in our vulnerabilities to learn how to walk more stable and healthy and safe, that we live in a safe world where we can be vulnerable and there's safety there. But instead, when we show weakness, something gets stolen, right? If you walk down the street and you show any vulnerability, someone steals your things, that kind of stuff. So we learn to put up a front, and that unfortunately has followed us as human beings for a long, long time. So the king and his nobles thought this made good sense, so he followed the council. He sent letters to all parts of the empire, to each of the province in its own script and language, proclaiming that every man should be the ruler of his own home and should say whatever he pleases. Wow. Right? Whatever he pleases, whatever he wants, right? Whatever he wants to do, that's going to fly. Unfortunate, man. Bad male leadership, right, has affected our world. And this is why we have everything we have today. This is, the reason why abortion and sexual issues, gender issues, all this stems from a lack of leadership in men. It all goes back to us. Men haven't done a good job of leading in the slightest. We haven't done a good job of being fathers. We haven't done a good job of the way we treat our loved ones. Our intimate relationships haven't been done right. And we've messed up on multiple levels. And here we see generation upon generation of messing up and what it's led into. This is something Israel, we saw, was learning, right, in Ezra and Nehemiah, that all the years of bad male leadership led to destruction in so many ways, right? In the way they even had intimacy, the partnerships that they had, it led to many different situations. And here we see the men in the Medo-Persian Empire, in what today Iran, is just dominating. And does that sound familiar to today in that region, right? If we got on a plane today and we all flew to Iran, what would your world be like? Being a male, being a female, how would our world change? Yeah, might be a lot different. So, wow, what a devotion. Man, really heavy-duty stuff. Objectification. Something to think about. Do I see people as individuals, as people with ancestry and backgrounds and, moms, dads, grandpas, meaning in life, hardship, vulnerability? Or is everything just, or am I just, is it about the power? Is it about me not showing vulnerability? Is it about me, just objectifying to get what I want? Wow. Pretty powerful devotion. So you guys have a great day, okay? You take care. Esther, chapter 1 in the books. Okay, bye-bye.